All right, good morning. Well, morning anyway. No, it's a good morning. It's a good morning in America. It's beautiful here. Sun's coming up. Weather's about right. Yeah? Right? You know, it's going to be a beautiful day here. But wow. All right. So, this morning, I'm going to talk about Afghanistan. First, I'm going to talk about it as a political commentator, an analyst who has a bit of an up on the competition as far as my credentials go. I'm going to talk about it as somebody who's been there. By been there, I mean Afghanistan. Combat vet. So, you'll hear a lot coming out of the talking heads today. Kabul has fallen. Steve Rodemeyer's in the chat says Watchdog estimate the 20-year war at $2.26 trillion. That's correct. That sounds about right. And there's more corruption in that money than you can imagine, because it's not just corruption in the corrupt U.S. government. You know, even the government under Trump the U.S. government, even under Trump, was deeply corrupt because, well, it still had that deep state military-industrial complex entrenched within the civilian bureaucracy. And as far as long-term weapons testing, yeah. Okay. So here's what's happened. We went into Afghanistan basically on the promise that we would find bin Laden. When I was there, and keep in mind, this is 10 years. I got back from Afghanistan 10 years ago. In fact, it would have been 10 years. It was 10 years at the end of July of this, or July, yeah, the end of July this year. Right. I was there for almost exactly 365 days to the minute. I mean, like, 365 days to the minute from the time we went wheels up from the Honolulu International Airport to the time we went wheels down at Honolulu coming home. And yes, as a military warfighter, as a U.S. Army soldier, because of the nature of the mission that I was involved in, we did not fly over on military air. We flew over on private flights. We landed at the civilian airport in Kuwait and took a sneaky tour bus into Afghanistan. We were a very small team of very, very specialized fighters. I will not go so far as to say we never should have gone into Afghanistan. There was work that needed to be done there. As for staying for 20 years, that was a shit fest. And that was a huge mistake. Now, what got us where we are now? It's over. Afghanistan is over. Now, there's a bit to be celebrated there. We don't need our people in Afghanistan. And when I say it's all but over, we're still, y'all pray for these guys. We still have USA 4 on the ground in Afghanistan trying to escape from the onslaught of the Taliban. The Taliban is a problem that we created, failed to solve when we had the chance to, and then exacerbated over time. And this this right now that's happening, the fall of Kabul, the fall of Kandahar, the fall of Afghanistan, let me show y'all something. Okay. Zoom in on that a little bit for you. Okay, so over here you've got May 5th. This is this year. Just May 5th. It says Taliban contested government. See, the Taliban was already holding strong in several places around Afghanistan. This was not the case before Joe Biden became president. And now they basically got everything. And this map, that says August 14th. This map, basically everything right here is now in that dark orange Taliban control. So here's where Biden screwed it up. Donald Trump actually entered into and brokered negotiations for a peace deal with the Taliban. Right? And he was universally derided by Democrats for that. Right? You don't deal with terrorists. I almost want to agree with that, and the proof is in the pudding here. But there's something you got to understand. Donald Trump negotiated a deal. He made a deal with the Taliban, and with it's a multi-party peace talk. The U.S. negotiated with the Afghan national government and the Taliban to leave Afghanistan. Now, that's a particularly interesting position of negotiation because the Taliban is the former legitimized official national federal government of Afghanistan. And the current, the until yesterday current government in Afghanistan was one that we went over there and helped to build and install. So I'm gonna back you up a little bit to the 80s. It started. You can really tell this story all the way back. Afghanistan is basically a country that is in a constant state of war. Now that the Taliban has taken over again, there's still going to be constant tribal skirmishes and all that. As I've explained on this show many times in the past, you hear people in America, you hear like in television shows and movies when people use the expression, "Oh, he's got the police on his payroll," right? And what they're talking about when they say that in the movies you're accustomed to, in the television shows, or even just talking about a dirty politician or a bad mob boss, you don't literally mean that he writes their paycheck. You don't literally mean that it is the business of this individual to actually bankroll, to payroll fund the police. What you mean is that he's bribing them, that the cops are dirty, and they've been bribed to look the other way for this bad guy. That's what the phrase means when you hear it in the context of American politics, society, or popular media. In Afghanistan, however, it literally means what the words say. The police are on the payroll of whatever the regional power broker is. And when I say regional power broker, these borders here, they don't even, the borders that are shown here, they don't even make the cut. They don't even really get you the idea. All of these regions are divided up even further into smaller tribal lands. And in any given one of those, you'll have a power broker who is he's almost always a Haji, which is a term that soldiers use almost like an ethnic slur against the locals there, but in the native language, Haji, it's a term of honor and respect. It refers to someone who has completed the Hajj, which is the pilgrimage to Mecca for Muhammad. So if you want to if you want to get that mad respect in Afghanistan, then you have to walk the many, many miles to the big sacred Rocky thing, and pray to the slave master pedophile that your holy war be blessed in the fire of hate that is Allah. So when you talk about the payroll thing, Haji actually has them on his payroll. That's legitimately the only payroll that those cops get. That said, that means that now that it has fallen and the U.S. is pulling out, this country is going to be chewed up with more and more small tribal skirmishes as smaller tribes consume one another, building into larger tribes. And the Taliban will remain in power there so long as the Taliban engages in that tribal conflict to quell the resistance of it. Now, the problems in Afghanistan did not begin with, Dan brought up the Mujahideen, that's where I was going next. The problems in Afghanistan did not begin with the Mujahideen, but the kind of current relevant tract did. So you had the Russians going into Afghanistan, and the Mujahideen were the guerrilla fighters. The word Mujahideen is the plural of the word Mujahid, which means a person who fights the jihad, a person who struggles in the name of Islam and blah blah blah. So, and then the word Taliban is the students of it means the students of the Quran. And believe it or not, I've done a little study on this, and I've had conversations with many people who are high-level intelligence analysts and high-level professional academicians who study Islam academically for the U.S. government to understand the culture and the nature of it for the purposes of developing an actionable intelligence picture for the government. And guys, you hear the story, you hear the news, you hear the American news media say, well, it's just a tiny percentage of Muslims that are terrorists. Or okay, it's a tiny percentage of Muslims who are terrorists, who are actively engaged in terrorism. But if you find a Muslim, like if you find, let's say you find a Muslim church, a mosque in America that's moderate or progressive, right? They let the women wear pants and drive, and they honestly do not support the activities of groups like the Taliban and so forth. Guys, that's a radical Muslim. Okay, that's not the majority. Those are the radicals. The Muslims that do not actively support the Taliban, ISIS, all that. That's your radical. As in, they do not represent the majority. The vast majority of Muslims, by poll and by action, support honor killings, the waging of jihad as a religious tenet, and the implementation of Sharia law in Muslim, well, not just in Muslim countries, in all countries. You're not talking about good people here. And hey, my boy Matty Parks has joined us this morning. Hey, Matt, remember that time? So Matt, everything we did is lost. They took it from us. They took it from us. So it's all going to shit now, and it didn't have to. Trump got him to the table, brokered a peace deal, and sat down. Jamie, I'm glad you asked. Jamie's asking, so is this because of Biden policies or was it inevitable? So to a certain extent, there was an inevitability here. But Trump negotiated a peace deal. And he negotiated a peace deal between the Afghan national government and the Taliban. And that deal was to pull out on May 1st. They were supposed to leave. We were supposed to be out of there on May 1st. Biden came along and decided, no. We're going to pull out later. Biden came in and broke the deal. This puts several problems in there. Okay, for one, you're talking about a country, you're talking about a people who take honor very seriously in a way that the average American does not. Right? Biden and his people breaking deals, telling lies, and going back on your word is just, it's part and parcel. It's how you do business. But keep in mind, for the Taliban, for the Muslims, as a religious point of art, they won't do that. That's a very important thing to them, keeping your word, but only among other Muslims. Right? You can't forget the taqiyya, which is the law under Islam, that it is not only permissible, but absolutely encouraged that you lie to and break deals and break faith with people who are not Muslim. Right? You are supposed to lie, cheat, and steal from people who are not converted Muslims in service of the Muslim faith and the eventual global Islamic caliphate. That's called the taqiyya. Feel free to go fact check me on that. So what that means is that since Biden broke his word, the Taliban gets to point to him and use that as propaganda and say, look, you see what monsters these people are? You can't even trust their word. You can't trust them to stick to a deal. Right? They cannot be trusted. They broke faith. Now, of course, if it was the Taliban who had broken the deal, then they would be telling their people, well, yeah, of course we broke the deal with the Americans. They're infidels. We brought out the taqiyya and used it to cheat the Americans, to cheat the white Satan in service of Islam and Muhammad. Right? They'd be all about that. But since we've done it now, Biden handed the Taliban a propaganda machine that they sorely wanted. So they wouldn't have had that propaganda to rally the support of the people against the Afghan national government. Because Biden breaking out also means that the Taliban gets to tell the Afghan people, hey, look, the Afghan national government is also breaking this deal. Right? The Taliban now gets to tell the local people, the Americans said they'd be gone by the 1st, and your government did not make that happen. Your government should have opened fire on the Americans on the 1st. Right? As soon as it was the case that the Americans were still on the ground on May 1st, then your Afghan national government should have opened fire on them to force them to leave, to stick to the deal. And they did not do that for you. So we, the Taliban, are going to come in and we're going to take care of business. We're going to do this the right way. We are going to keep the faith with you. We are going to keep our promises to you, unlike the evil Americans and the evil Afghan National Army and the evil Afghan National Government and the evil Afghan National Police Force. Right? So this is a huge win that Joe Biden has just handed to the Taliban. And here's something I want you to understand. I've gone down this road 1,000 times on things like Obamacare, talking about the Great Society, talking about the extended unemployment benefits, talking about anything. Take your pick. Any Democrat policy maneuver, I can point to it and I can say basically the same thing. Tim Pool likes to mention Hamlin's razor. Hamlin's razor is the assertion that you should not attribute to malice anything that can be explained by incompetence. Here's the thing about this, though. This was so predictable. This is so perfectly predictable. Right? I've been preaching on this since the middle of the Obama administration. That while we needed to get out of Afghanistan, I've maintained that for a long time, that it's a tricky thing to do. And if it's done sloppily, it will essentially drop a power vacuum, which brings the Taliban in. Hands tied here. One of the problems we have in Afghanistan, I'll get back to this in a little bit, is that the locals on the ground are not competent. Right? In theory, part of the mission for the last 20 years has been to train the local Afghan citizens to become their own fighting force, to become their own military, to enforce their own national sovereignty. They're not capable of it. So this is so perfectly predictable that I have been talking about how this was going to go down and be basically what we're seeing now since at least 2012. I would say I've been saying it since before that, but I wasn't on. I didn't have the live show before that. You can go back to at least as far as 2014 and find episodes of this show where I talk about that in explicit detail, and it's not complicated. Now, a lot of the news narrative that you're hearing now that is that's analyzing this, they are saying things like I heard one reporter from Sky News earlier saying that the only thing that's surprising about how this went is how fast it happened. Because seriously, the Taliban just came in and undid 20 years and $2.26 trillion of U.S. work in less than a week. They just flipped that switch. It was too easy. And I do mean it was too easy. Kabul just fell without a shot fired. The Taliban just walked in and said, yep, this is us. We got this. Y'all can go home. You're dismissed. And they kicked the National Army out. So, they kicked out the national government, rather. So, there's going to be a lot of analysis on this. You're going to hear a lot of news on this. This is going to dominate the news because, God forbid, you pay attention to anything else going on in the world, like Joe Biden suddenly increasing the amount of food stamp benefits to the less adequate by 25% across the board, raising the average per person cost to $160 a month. And guys, real quick, $160 a month is not enough to live on. It's enough to barely survive on. And if somebody else is paying for it for you indefinitely, you don't deserve more than that. So, but God forbid we take a look at that or anything about how the representatives from the World Health Organization are now admitting that they were pressured by China to discount the Wuhan lab theory. No. We're going to pay attention to Afghanistan. On this show, we're going to be talking about those other issues as well. But today we are talking about Afghanistan because I was there, and here's something that you need to understand. Biden screwing up Afghanistan in this incredibly predictable way Many people are going to make the mistake and attributing this historically bad foreign policy failure to Biden's hubris. Some are even going to make the mistake of attributing this failure only to Biden's megalomania, to his ego, right? And these are elements, right? The hubris being that we've been there to train them. We're America. We're so awesome that we cannot have done a bad job. Guys, it's not that we did a bad job training these guys in Afghanistan. It's that they're untrainable. Okay, we're talking about a local populace here that is they're too stupid to learn. I'll come back to that in a minute. But, that's the hubris thing. We're so good that we cannot possibly have failed to train these men adequately. And then there's the megalomania thing. He had to break the deal. Biden had to break the deal, because if we got out on May 1st, when the deal was originally set for, then it's a win for Trump, right? The drawdown from Afghanistan would have been a win from Trump. Trump was drawing down Afghanistan throughout his entire presidency. And let's not forget, one of the earliest moves that Trump made was the Moab, right? He dropped the Moab in Afghanistan. And if y'all want to go back and watch that episode, that was one of the bluffs back when I did those. I might start doing those again. The bluffs were fun. Little pop-ups. I just haven't had time for a little while. But Trump dropped a Moab over there. So a major factor in the Taliban taking Afghanistan this quickly, or even attempting it at all, is the mere fact that Joe Biden is the president and not Donald Trump. Because Joe Biden is a coward. Joe Biden is a predictable, lily-livered coward who the Taliban, like anybody else who's got eyes to see, understands is an absolute puppet of the Chinese Communist government, the Chinese Communist Party. And make no mistake, America pulling out of Afghanistan offers a massive global strategic advantage to China. So if you think that Joe Biden screwed this up because he's stupid, or because he's greedy, or because he's too cocky, I'll be fair, those are all reasonable assumptions to make because Biden is stupid, greedy, and cocky. But that's not what's happening here. Hamlin's razor. This is so predictable that it cannot be attributed to incompetence. It would be unreasonable not to at least suspect, if not believe outright, that Biden was ordered by his biggest campaign backers, that being the Chinese Communist Party, to pull out of Afghanistan for the benefit of China at the cost of U.S. blood and treasure. This is a calculated maneuver intended by the Democrat Party and its figurehead, Joe Biden, to hurt America. Look at the Democrat Party as it's constituted. The squad, right? The Democrat Party is filling up with people like Ilhan Omar, Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib, etc., etc. These people are not just friendly to brown people, right? That would be fine. You got a little ethno-identity thing there that you want to tote around with you, whatever. It's cool for you guys because you're not white, but it's cool, whatever. It's not okay for white people to be proud of being white, but it's totally okay for everybody who's not white to work out of their way against white people with malice. But you look at Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, these women are not just soft on pro-American policy. They are actively pro-anti-American groups, right? They're actively against the prosperity and liberty of America, and they are actively working in support of anti-American and other groups which are against strategically, politically, and even militarily working in opposition to our interests and the interests of our international allies. And let me be fair, we don't have good international allies. And there's a reason we don't have very good international allies. Outside of the United States, there aren't good governments. Right? The old quote that's often, I think wrongly, but often attributed to Winston Churchill is democracy is the worst government in the world except for all the other ones. America's the worst country in the world, except for all the other ones. We do have problems with corruption in this country. We do have problems with mismanagement in this country. We do have problems with evil people being elected to leadership, evil, corrupt people being entrenched in the deep state bureaucracy. We do have those problems in this country. But we're still the least bad country on the planet. In fact, I'll amend that. America is the greatest country on earth with the least awful government. That's probably a better way to say it. And that's taken from all the major players in the global political game. I imagine there are actually a few smaller countries where the governments have laws that are less freedom, that are less pro-freedom than American law, but their governments are so small and poorly funded that they just don't have an enforcement mechanism. I'd be okay with that. But the best you can say for America is that of all the power players, we are the greatest country on the planet Earth with the least terrible government. And here's what should scare you about that. The only reason we have the least terrible government is that the Constitution restricts the power of government. And we have a modicum of an enforcement mechanism in place to use the Constitution to enforce the restrictions on that government. But, guys, we're rapidly getting to the point that the closest thing we have to that enforcement mechanism are essentially activist judges who, against the will of the government, continue to insist on the will of the people and the enforcement of the Constitution. Legitimate constitutional jurists are an endangered species. A broad majority of judges in this country now are not your friend. They are not. Your politicians, your police, your judicial system, they think that they rule you. They think that they have authority over you. Don't ever forget, the government does not have authority to compel you to take actions. Right? That was one of the big arguments with the Obamacare thing is, oh, no. You're not saying if I do a bad thing, then I'll be punished for doing a bad thing. You're saying if I don't take an explicit action, then I'll be punished for not doing a specific thing. Right? There are very, very few other laws in America. I can only think of one, maybe two off the top of my head. I can think of two off the top of my head, right? If you go out in public without putting on clothes, then you'll be punished for that. And honestly, it doesn't bother. I wouldn't give a shit. I wouldn't care if people were going to Walmart to do their shopping naked. That's, it might be obnoxious, but I would prefer to see naked people shopping in Walmart to seeing my government issue affirmative active mandates. Then there's affirmative action itself, where you're being compelled under threat of penalty to make specific hiring choices. Clearly an unconstitutional maneuver. And of course, the purchase of car insurance or health insurance. Like homeowners insurance is a little different. The law doesn't require you to buy homeowners insurance. The contract, everybody has to have homeowners insurance if you have a mortgage. But that's not a matter. That's not a function of law. That's a function of, Ritter points out the vax. Yeah, that's one. We're not there yet. It's not actually being compelled, except for government employees are being compelled to the vaccine. The majority of U.S. citizens are not yet subject to compulsory vaccination, and that's going to be a dark day when we get there, and I think we are going to get there. But the other two, so homeowners insurance, car insurance, health insurance, you basically have to have all three. Car insurance and health insurance, you're fined if you don't have it. And I'm actually not sure where we are on the fines with the health insurance at this point. I've been out of that business for a few years, and I think Biden was trying to bring back the individual mandate, but I don't know that he's achieved that yet. Anyway, but the homeowners insurance thing, that's a clause in the contract. It's not that the law requires you to have homeowners insurance. It's that the bank won't sign a mortgage contract with you unless that mortgage contract includes homeowners insurance for the duration of the contract. That's reasonable. That's reasonable. If I hire you to fly a drone on one of my productions, I'm going to ask you to have insurance on that drone. I'm going to ask you to carry certain kind of insurance on that drone, so that if you crash the drone while you're working as a contractor for me, that the guy that you drove the whirling little plastic blades of death into doesn't come back to sue me and me get ruined by you screwing up your drone flight. That's why I carry insurance on my drones when I fly them for any kind of business kind of thing. And yeah, exactly, Dan. Dan points out, and the chat's a little behind where I'm talking, so Dan's about to hear me say the thing that he wrote there. But let me add, he says homeowners insurance is a contract between two parties. It's a voluntary contract between two parties, more importantly. So you look at Afghanistan, and guys, it's 8 o'clock. Normally, I cut the show off at 8 o'clock. I call it a day. I got a few more things that I want to get through. Y'all want to hang out? I appreciate it. We got a pretty lively chat going on here. And I really appreciate you guys coming in and hanging out and watching the show today. So, I mentioned earlier that the Afghanis are too dumb to learn. I mean, absolutely. Okay? When I was there, one of the things we did, the 101st went and kicked the Taliban locals out of Pir Muhammad School near Sanjay, Afghanistan. That's a few clicks northwest of Kandahar, and that's where I spent most of my time. Was in the region around Kandahar and the kind of northeast area just above Kandahar. So they went and kicked the Taliban out of this building that they were using as a stronghold and a weapons depot and a trading post, and it was an old mosque. It was it was a mosque that basically had burnt down previously. And so the 101st went in and kicked the Taliban out, and we went in there and rebuilt the building, shored it up, cleaned it up, and we got a school established there. Now, when I say a school, it's all ages in one classroom, and the entire curriculum is essentially one of the elders teaching them to read from the Quran. right? So instead of learning their ABCs and C spot run, they're learning their alpha scribbles backwards, because they write right to left over there. They're learning their script backwards, and it's kill the infidel, all praise to Allah. But that is the extent of the education of most of the citizenry there, right? The literacy rate in that country is abysmal. And those who are literate, they basically read enough so that they can recognize when they're reading passages from the Quran. We lost local soldiers there. We lost Afghan National Police and Afghan National Army soldiers over stupid shit. Like, for example, we lost an Afghan National Police officer and an Afghan National Army soldier, and I'll just call them the ANP and the ANA from here on. At two different times, a couple months apart. Coming in from patrols, they went to set their weapon, their rifle, right? Their AK-47. They went to set their rifle down in a rifle rack. And accidentally shot themselves in the face. That happened twice to two different Afghanis there. Killed him, right? I mean, shot him in the face. Blowed his face off. His face. One day, I was in the Tactical Operations Center talking to the first sergeant and the commander about stuff that I can't go into here. And God, I will never forget the look on those faces. An Afghan National Army patrol, an ANA patrol came in, and they had a shoebox. They carried it through the front gate of the cop, brought it to the TOC, brought it in to show it to the first sergeant and the commander. They open up the box, and it's an IED made out of it's an improvised explosive device made out of soda cans and piss and fertilizer and batteries and little pieces of stolen technology. And it's a pressure plate IED, right? Okay, it's a bomb. It's a bomb that they found on the road. Right, it was set up as a booby trap on a common patrol route by the Taliban in hopes that it would blow somebody up. And I'm going to get back to this in just a second, because that's also not true, except it sort of is, and I'll get back to it in a second. But it's a bomb. It's a damn bomb in a shoebox, and they brought it in. They brought it on the base. They carried it into the command center. And they walked up to the commander and the first sergeant, right? They walked up to the two highest-ranking people on the base in a room with, maybe a dozen or so other soldiers and civilian contractors, right? The LEO advisor and a couple of the interpreters, stuff like that. They walk in. It's a goddamn bomb! They brought it on base and brought it to the commander so that they could ask him what they should do with it. They picked it up and put it in a shoebox and carried it 3-4 kilometers back to base and brought it in to show it to the commander and ask him what to do with it. Oh. I'm standing right there, and I was like, wow, that's it's a miracle that they managed to carry it that far without it going off. Now, we're not just talking about people who are too stupid to learn. Another little anecdote before I go back to the bomb and how much danger I was really in when that bomb came in the door. Another little anecdote here. we were flying a drone, and keep in mind, this is 10 years ago. This was the height of military surveillance technology at the time. We had this drone we were flying to get some, and it was basically a camera. It was basically just a camera drone to get some surveillance footage over the surrounding area. And this thing was like a a trash can with four weed eaters strapped to it. It was loud as all get out. I mean, just modern drones are still they're obnoxious, but they're obnoxious. The noise is obnoxious because it's kind of a high pitched noise. Drone technology back then was loud, right? There was no such thing as a stealth drone. If you were flying a drone over the locals, they all knew that it was flying over. It was loud. So we flew one out, and the guy that was operating it that day, I can't remember his name. I probably shouldn't say it on the air anyway. But anyway, the guy that was operating the drone that day, he flew it out, and in fairness, it was on my orders that he had flown out as far as he had. I had asked him to kind of push it to the edge and get us we were trying to get eyes on something that was a little bit further out that we hadn't been able to see before. And it happened to be one of those days. It was a beautiful, clear day, not a cloud in the sky. Just all the conditions were perfect for basically maximum range on the radio control to push the drone out as far as we could get it and get a look at something that I hadn't been able to get a look that way of before. But it got too far out, and it's not like my DJI Phantom. If it gets too far away and loses communication with the controller, it just says, "Oh well, I guess the boss is done. I'll just turn around and go home." And the drone will literally, it'll fly up to the maximum allowed height, 124 meters, and it'll fly all the way back to where it took off, and it'll land itself right there unless it reconnects with the radio en route, and then I can take over control. These things, however, it lost control with the it lost contact with the radio controller, and it just dropped out of the damn sky. Boosh, crash. Starship Krish. How many of y'all got that reference? Krish. If it helps, he looks like this. So it crashed. So, it was still an expensive drone. Even if all the footage was like 420i and black and white, crappy, still usable, actionable intelligence imaging. So we mounted up a patrol and went out to find it. Went looking. It wasn't where we expected it to be. And when I say where we expected it to be in the burning crater that we found where it should have been, because obviously that's where it should have been. But it wasn't there. There were a few parts, so it's not like we had mistaken a different burning crater for the one we were looking for. It's like, no, this is the drone we're looking for. So it was obvious the drone had been picked up and carted off by the locals. So we start asking. We start asking around the local village. We start asking people, hey, our drone crashed. Has anybody seen it? Hey, do you know where my drone is? Hey, did you see my drone? Hey, did you see who grabbed the drone? Hey, does anybody know? Oh, I didn't see it. No, I didn't even know there was a drone flying. Bullshit. It sounds like this. Didn't know there was a drone. Bullshit. You saw it. You heard it. You knew it was there. Nobody didn't know the drone was there. My wife in Hawaii knew we were flying a drone today. They're that freaking loud. Oh, no, we didn't see it, Mr. American. Mr. American, we didn't see it. So, okay, it's 2010. I'm a big fan of Apple devices, and this was one of those times. 2010 was the year the iPad came out. So, it was still very much a novelty. Even the iPhone was pretty novel at the time. I had an iPad and an iPod Touch with me over there, because I'd use a little local flip phone. So basically just pulled up the phone, right? And obviously the newer phones are a little different. But I just pulled one of these. I just walked around and said, that drone that fell down, the timer's running out, right? 12 minutes. You got the little, and and we just showed it to people. Hey, the timer's running down on that drone. It's going to explode in 12 minutes. Right? And it just showed them the timer. Right? Because it's amazing how much a prop helps to sell a lie. It's going to blow up in 12 minutes. And all of a sudden, everybody's chatting. Oh, Mr. American, it's over here. It's over. yeah, there we go. It's over here. So we went over there, and our guy that was picking it up made a big show of like sitting down next to it and unplugging a wire and pushing a button and saying, okay, it's disarmed. We're safe. And we picked up the drone and took it back to base. Oh. And in all fairness, the technology, the iThingies and all that, they're interconnected enough through Bluetooth networking and cellular data and all that stuff now that I could probably sell that lie with an iPhone even today. But I mean, in 2010 doing that, it was like Marty McFly using his Walkman to brain burn poor George, right? Like, what the hell is that? But these are the people we're talking about. The Afghan people are too stupid to learn. Their literacy rate is abysmal. And they're deeply corrupt. Right? Let me go back to the bomb and the talk. I was never in any danger from that bomb that they brought into the TOC. None of us were. That bomb, and this is a probably thing, right? This is a thing which we know to have happened often, but I will never know for sure if this is exactly what happened in this case, but it would be unreasonable not to at least suspect that this is what happened. The bomb that they brought to us did in fact include all of the parts required for that bomb to be functional. It is likely, however, that the bombs weren't correctly that the bomb wasn't correctly assembled, that it was intentionally left inert. There was a wire that was left out or not connected to the right piece of the detonator, something like that. That bomb was almost certainly never going to go off, even though it was all the makings for a bomb of that type. And here's why. The U.S. government paid ransom. The U.S. government would pay for intelligence like finding a bomb. So the Taliban and the locals were always in cahoots with the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. Right? So what would happen is a Taliban agent who was running low on bomb-making material buying money would build a small bomb, place it by the side of the road. It would be inert, right? Because even if it was our bomb squad that went out, right, to deal with that bomb, if it went off and killed the bomb squad, then that complicates the intelligence process. Or if the guy coming to get it gets blown up when it goes off, if the snitch that comes and reports the bomb gets blown up when you go out, then there's nobody to pay the reward money to. So the Taliban would send one of their bomb makers, they did this all the time, to plant a bomb that doesn't work, but it's got all the parts there. So if anybody goes to investigate it, they might assume that, oh, it's a bomb. It is a bomb. It totally is, but it was made by a bad bomb maker who didn't make it right. So thank God it wouldn't have gone off, but except that was the point. The point was that it won't go off, because what they were doing is they would place the bomb and then they'd send their buddy to go to the Americans and report the bomb so that the Americans would come out and destroy the bomb and then pay the buddy for the intel on finding the bomb. That way, the buddy of the bomb maker gets paid a nice chunk of money as a reward for turning over the intel on the bomb, and then he takes that money back to the bomb maker to buy parts to make bombs that work. Then he builds more bombs, actually kills some Americans, starts running low on supplies, and does it again. And they just lather, rinse, repeat. Right? This kind of goes back to the corruption. You've got an American government that was deeply corrupt. Under Obama, we had a program called it was Cash for Work program, and I shit you not. Here's how it worked. We set up a folding table at the front of the gate, at the front of the command outpost, and we would send an armed guard, a couple of armed guards, and a private down there with a cash box, local currency, right? U.S. taxpayer American dollars converted into local currency. Go down to the gate. He'd have the cash box, and he'd have a bunch of tools that we also bought with U.S. taxpayer money, shovels, rakes, stuff like that. And then everybody from the village, at least all the men anyway, would come and line up at the table, and in the morning they'd write their name on a piece of paper, and we'd give them a shovel or a rake or a hoe or a couple of tools, and they'd say, well, we're going to go clean out the trash that's in the ditch over there, or we're going to go work that field over there, we're going to go we're going to go do this piece of work on the land, on the local area, right? We're going to fix that culvert. We're going to clean up that mess. We're going to this, we're going to that. And then I would watch them. I would watch them from our surveillance cameras, walk from the gate with their tools over to a shady tree, not too close, not too far away. And they would sit down and play cards or, they'd drink tea and just go and hang out, screw around for 8 hours or so. They'd come back to deliver the tools, and then they'd get paid for a day of work. That's... What could be more American than that under a Democrat president? Right, Joe? Right? The other thing, one day, okay. This, I'm not just saying this to toot my own horn. I mean, y'all understand. I'm pretty happy with myself. I'm probably a clinical megalomaniac, but no shit. People say things like this to me more often than I could imagine. A few years ago, I was taking some college classes, and after class one day, this chick walks out, and I'm smoking a cigarette in the kind of courtyard or whatever, and she walks out and says, "Hey, Chris, can I get one of those?" I was like, "Yeah, absolutely. Here, have a cigarette." And she looks at me, she says, and I'm not gonna tell you the question she asked because that's a whole nother conversation. But she looks at me, she says, "Hey, Chris, you know everything. What do you think about?" And then she asked me a question that. I'll go into that on a whole different show because it's a little bit for those of you that are privy to the private chat line. I'll drop a message about it later, and you'll laugh your asses off at it. But this was another kind of one of those. Damn, I just read Winston Smith's comment. And I lost my spot. I was going to go back to... Oh, that's what it was. So, another story of corruption from down there. So one day, I'm just minding my own business. Got a plate of food in the chow hall. And the fuel technician, right? Basically we had a guy on the cop whose job was to, manage the fuel, order more fuel when we needed it, JP8 and MoGas. That's jet fuel and motor fuel and diesel, right? So, you got a couple of different vehicles down there. Some of them run on jet fuel, some of them run on diesel, et cetera, et cetera. Comes to me, sits down, and the fuel I can't remember his name. He was a good guy. He was a Southern boy. Not the sharpest tool in the shed, but smart, certainly smart enough to be valuable, right? He wasn't going to be going after a PhD or anything, but he wasn't a dummy. Good guy, and he comes and sits down. And he says, "Hey, Chris, you're the smartest guy on this base," and seriously, I get hit with shit like that often enough that I've given up on pretending to be humble about it. I say, "Okay, yeah, go on," because now it's deeply amusing, honestly. He comes over and he says, "Hey, Chris, you're the smartest guy on this base. I need you to help me with something." Okay, what you got? And he brings out this yellow legal pad with, I mean, his handwriting was at least as bad as mine, but he had been keeping meticulous notes on this yellow legal pad of when the Afghan National Police and the Afghan National Army would come in the little Toyota Tundra or little Toyota pickup trucks that we had supplied them with U.S. taxpayer dollars, and they'd come into the base in the morning, and they'd fill the tank up, and then they'd go out on patrol. They'd leave the base, and they'd drive 10 or 15 miles away, and then the next day they'd come in and they'd be on E. And or that evening, sometimes middle of the day, and they'd be, fuel light coming on empty and filling up again, because we're filling them up for free. And keep in mind, we're talking about during the Obama administration, refined regular gas, which is being shipped from the Middle East to America, refined and sent back. Guys, we were paying $50 a gallon for the regular gas, right? The U.S. government was paying $50 a gallon for the regular gas that it was putting in these cars. And this fuel tech, this good old country boy, had caught on that, oh, here's what's happening. And I ran surveillance on it. We busted that scam, and we figured it out. But here's what's happening: the local A&P and A&A, to a man, every one of them that was in charge of driving one of those vehicles, had made a deal with one or more of the local gas stations that the civilians bought their gas from. They would come to us, fill up their tank, drive to a nearby gas station, siphon almost all of it back out into their gas tank so that they could resell it on the local economy. So I had, sorry guys, that that alarm went off for my little demonstration earlier. Sorry about that. So we had to implement new control measures to put a stop to that happening. That was a massive scandal. And I'm proud to have had a hand in shutting that down. But that's, okay. I've been talking to you for an hour. I appreciate the hell out of y'all hanging out with me. I could go on with war stories and digging into just the inadequacy and the corruption of our government and the absolute travesty that has been our involvement over there, and detail even more personal experiences, just absolute corruption. Let me throw a couple more bones at you to help you understand who the Afghan people are before I move on, and then I'm gonna call it a day. I got a couple of notes here that I wanted to make sure I hit, so I'll take a look at those and make sure that I've hit those bases. And we'll button this up. So, to understand what kind of people we're talking about, on patrol one time, I saw, it was a young boy about 7 or 8 who was severely mentally handicapped, right? He was whatever his particular condition is, it did not include a particular physical malformity, but he was obviously mentally handicapped, very, badly mentally handicapped. And when we encountered this boy, there was nothing we could do about it. I wanted so very badly to solve that situation correctly, but the law prevented me. Boy's father was sitting on the front, it's not really a front porch, but sitting in front of the house, sitting in a plastic chair, smoking this cigar and drinking tea. And the boy was playing in the front yard on a dog chain. Right, one of those chains where you got the spike that you drive into the ground, and then there's a collar around your neck. Yeah. Yeah, just mentally handicapped little boy chained to a dog post to run in the yard. Daddy's just sitting there watching. And then I mentioned the school that we built. I've talked about this on the show before, and I'm gonna try not to get misty when I recount this now. I'm not going to go into deep detail, but I'm going to give you enough grisly detail that you understand who we're talking about. One of the pieces here was that the school was open to boys and girls. So there was one class, just a couple, 2 hours every day, boys and girls, and basically all ages. From we basically had like from 5-year-olds up to about 14-year-old, 12-year-old, probably 5 to 12. There may have been 1 or 2 14, 13-year-olds in there, which is another tricky thing because either they don't know how old they are, they don't understand how years work, or they're lying. But they're all just whatever age they feel like saying they are most of the time. So you got to kind of guess. The boys and girls learning how to read together. The Taliban does not like that shit at all. So, at first, we would take armed guard. We would take an armed patrol, and we would escort these children to and from the school. Right? Just half a dozen armed soldiers would walk down, meet the kids, walk them over to the school, make sure they got there safe, hang out for an hour or two, and then at the end of the school day, we'd walk them back home. Not all the kids went to school, right? Not all the kids in the community went to school. The hope was that we could get all the kids in the village going to school, but not all of them would. A lot of the parents were terrified of letting their children go to the school, and rightly so. And that's why we provided an armed escort every day. Sean, you said Taliban will be hunting them girls with schooling. Yeah, that's pretty much where the story's going, my man. Stay with me. After a while, the parents decided, some of the parents decided, and they spoke with the elders, and the elders came and spoke with us, and they insisted that they didn't want the guns around the children. They didn't feel safe having guns around the children. Okay, and I want y'all to remember this story the next time you hear somebody talking about a school shooting in America, and, well, what are you going to do, arm the teachers? Abso-fucking-lutely yes! If you don't feel safe with your child around a teacher who is armed, you shouldn't feel safe with your child around that teacher at all. Absolutely yes. So they asked, and our commander made the armed patrols back off. I because my mission was very specific, I didn't actually do the armed patrols. As a rule, I did get to go on a couple of them because I wanted to, but as a rule, that wasn't my mission. Here's where it became my mission. Here's where it became my problem. We stopped walking them to school, and all of a sudden, a bunch of these kids disappeared. Gone. They disappeared for a few days, and then end of the week, one morning, sun comes up, and just 12 or 13 of them, little girls. There they are, right there in the little village square next to the local well. They were missing their ears, noses, and fingers. That happened. It was the third or fourth day after we stopped the armed patrol. Missing their ears, noses, and fingers. As a rule, I preferred to capture the enemy as often as possible because I worked in intelligence and I wanted to be able to get in their heads and learn whatever I could to find out who else they were connected to. Use that intelligence to flush out and eliminate more enemies. I didn't ask any questions when we found those guys. Not fucking one. So when you see the news now, and you see that Kandahar has fallen, and Kabul has fallen, and Joe Biden has delivered the single greatest foreign policy blunder in U.S. history, I want you to remember that the people we're talking about are the people who chain special needs children up in their front yards and mutilate little girls to send political messages. And then we're talking about their ally, their major funding contributor, China. Who are the kind of people that will come by and weld your apartment doors shut. Now, real quick, I see Alexandru says Trump would have withdrawn as well. Yeah, go back and watch the beginning of this episode there, Alexandru, because I went into some detail about the difference between the Trump deal and where Biden made his mistake. Trump had a deal in place. And I'm going to close on this. Trump wasn't perfect. Now, there is a reason that this is happening under Biden and not under Trump. And that's not just because Biden's the president and Trump isn't. If Donald Trump were still the president right now, and we'd stuck to the May 1st timeline, then the Taliban would have been denied that valuable propaganda, which we discussed on this show just a little less than an hour ago. The Taliban would have been denied that very powerful piece of psychological war weaponry, which they are currently using as part of their military advance to accomplish what they've done, which is to undo everything that we've done in 20 years in just under a week. The other piece of this equation that cannot be overstated is that Joe Biden is a notoriously public, corrupt coward. So if Donald Trump were still the president, part of the Taliban math would have to be, if we just go in and take Afghanistan back, even though we said we wouldn't when we made the deal with the Donald, he'll drop Moabs. But Donald Trump's not the president anymore. So they know that there will be no consequences. Right? If you have any doubt of that, it's not hard, it's not complicated. All you have to do is look at who the Democrat Party is, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, etc., right? These are pro-terror politicians who have been elected in the United States. And so the response here is going to be just like the response to their other political friends, other terrorist groups like Black Lives Matter and Antifa, where they are allowed to conduct war against the United States and suffer no consequences. There were BLM activists last year who committed murder on camera, were arrested and released without charges. They talk about the insurrection, January 6th. Oh, federal... Antifa and BLM burned buildings last year. People were arrested in the act of setting federal government buildings on fire and released without charges. There is no doubt in the minds of any bad actor in this world right now that if you hate America and wish to cause her harm, then the current U.S. government has got your back. Just like Kamala Harris raising funds for legal defense for BLM and Antifa, just like Obama mailing pallets of cash to Iran, the enemies of the United States of America know, without a doubt, and with good reason, that if you hate America and wish to see her destroyed and are willing to take actions in that regard, then the government and its current elected bodies of the United States of America have your back. They will not only support you and defend you against the consequences of law, they will fund your operation. Even if it means they have to do it sneaky ways by helping you set up a gas-stealing scam or set up a cyclical scam where you turn in intelligence for cash and then use that cash to fund further criminal activity so that you can then report fake criminal activity to get more money to keep the cycle going. So, due to the cowardice of the Afghan military and government. Alexandru, yes. Okay, Ritter's criticism there, you're operating under the false pretense that they view themselves as a country or care about invisible lines on a map. Okay, and then Alexandru says, this fall is mostly due to the cowardice of the Afghan military and government. They're unwilling to fight for their country. You're both almost on it. So it is because Ritter's right. Most of them, they don't have a concept of Afghanistan as a nation. Their localization and basically balkanization conceptualization of their order of battle organization is essentially the tribal thing, right? They organize themselves by tribes, and those are very small, very local. They're hard. individual tribes, with a few exceptions, are hardly even whole villages, right? So most of them, they conceptualize themselves in that framework. They belong to the tribe. They're whatever tribe they are. And, like in America, we think, we might think of ourselves as a Georgian, a citizen of the state of Georgia, and a citizen of the United States, right? And there's kind of a hierarchy there. So, like in not in a hierarchy of importance, but in a hierarchy of just the size of the organization, right? U.S., Georgia, Lowry, right? These people don't think like that. They think, Lowry, right? Chris is a Lowry. And that's the extent of the organizational thought. So they don't have a conceptual framework within which to understand trying to retain that country as a country. The Taliban, however, does. Right? And never forget, the Taliban, unlike Al-Qaeda, ISIS, etc., was at one point the globally recognized legitimate government of Afghanistan until we ousted them in 2001. So this is not just some backwoods hillbilly religious nuts that put together a little militia fighting group and yelled rah rah screw the government for 20 years. No. This is more akin to we went in and deposed the government of Michigan, and so they took their state National Guard and went and hid in Canada for 2 decades, and then came back when we gave up. So, and then Sean Stryker, I'm going to address this comment, and this is the last thing I'm going to say today before I move on. Theocracies are the most dangerous of all. Some theocracies have the state as their god. Food for thought. And the last thing that I want to leave you with on the topic of theocracies, these people don't want the things that we want. They don't want freedom or even prosperity in the way that we conceptualize and understand that. If you gave the Afghan people a perfect, working, representative democracy with a constitution, the first thing they would do is to vote in something like the Taliban totalitarian Islamic Caliphate to be the official national government. If you give these people the vote so that they can vote on the way that they are governed in order to govern themselves, their first maneuver will be to vote that right away. That's just who they are. And that's who they are by dint of their own social conditioning, which is consistent. I'll give them that. They are consistent. But if you've never been to Afghanistan, imagine the glory of Rome. And then back up a few thousand years and think about what a general area would look like before then. It's basically that with machine guns and cell phones. Right? The whole country, with the exception of a couple of tiny little bright spots, I say loosely, in, okay. I'm going to want to show y'all this. I really am going to call it a day at some point, but but basically, the whole country looks like 1000 BC plus machine guns and cell phones. This is from this morning? No, from yesterday afternoon. The Air Force is on its way out. And these people, my God, they're grabbing onto this plane and holding on. Like, guys, I promise you this. I promise you this. If you hold on to that plane for the 14 to 16 hours it takes to fly to America, you are going to freeze to death, assuming you don't just lose your grip and fall and die. Whew. And just like I was saying a minute ago, too dumb to learn. Imagine not understanding that grabbing onto the outside of a giant bird to fly out of one country and to almost the other side of the world is just not going to work for you. Alex Andrew says, I'm surprised nobody got sucked. By the way, are you Zaluska? Just because nobody else watches on Twitch. Anyway, that's scary shit, man. It's not the one you want. All right, hour and a half. I do not normally go like that. I think. Oh, well, Alex Andrew, I very much appreciate you watching. We've got a friend of the show, Alex the Slav, and so I thought that you might have been my other Alex, but I appreciate you watching the show. Hey man, hit that like button, subscribe. Honestly, I don't do much with Twitch. I multi-stream all over the place. We're primarily on YouTube and Facebook, but I'm also on all of the alternatives like Odyssey and all those. Odyssey, BitChute, PocketNet.app, etc., etc. Go check us out on all those places. And not broadcasting in any category. I'll have to go take a look at that. Alexander, you may have just done me a huge favor, and I appreciate it. If you want to do me another favor that I would appreciate greatly, our normal show is at 7:30 every weekday morning. It's a half hour. We do political analysis. Sometimes we do science stuff. Sometimes we just nerd out on comic books, comic book movies, whatever. We talk about what I want to talk about, and politics is a big part of that. Go check us out on YouTube and share the show. And per your recommendation there, Alexandru, I will go over and check out our channel on Twitch and see what the category situation is, and I'll fix that. Maybe maybe you'll help us grow the rest of the channels from there. I appreciate that. Y'all be safe. EM says it's 1:30 in Europe. Roger that. Y'all be safe out there. I love you. I appreciate you watching the show, and I will see you tomorrow.